minds and our hearts are both sacred. Faith and science, doubt and belief serve the pursuit of truth. Join us for Evolving Universe, Evolving Faith, a Darkwood Brew series produced in collaboration with the Adler Planetarium in Chicago and the Clergy Letter Project. We're exploring how current scientific theories on creation and the evolution of the universe, quantum theory, and the human body itself reawaken our spiritual imagination more robustly than any time since the Enlightenment. Please join us on this exciting journey.
Polvo de estrella.
Stardust.
¿Qué hay en una estrella?
What's in a star? We are. All the elements of our body and the planet were once in the belly of a star. We are stardust. 15 billion years ago, we were a mass of hydrogen, floating in space, turning slowly, dancing, and the gas condensed more and more, gaining increasingly more mass, and mass became star and began to shine. As they condensed, they grew hot and bright. Gravitation produced thermal energy, light, and heat. That is to say, love. Stars were born, grew, and died. And the galaxy was taking the shape of a flower, the way it looks now on a starry night. Our flesh and our bones come from other stars, and perhaps even from other galaxies. We are universal, and after death, we will help to form other stars and other galaxies. We come from the stars, and to them we shall return.
Hi, welcome to Darkwood Brew, where ancient Christian mystical practice blends with modern interactive web technology, world-class jazz, arts, biblical scholarship, and, well, you never know exactly what's going to happen. On November 7th, 1492, just before noon, a brilliant fireball exploded over Switzerland, leaving a fiery trail for over 100 miles before its 280-pound remains plunged 3 feet into the ground across the border in an Alsatian wheat field outside of the town of Ennisheim. Terrified, the locals wondered what it could mean. The king himself came for an inspection. Consulting his counselors, the king was advised that, lucky for him, the stone's fiery entrance was nothing short of a miracle from God, a sign of the king of God's favor toward the king. The stone was henceforth put on display at the local church. Well, this past Friday, we had a taste of the stir that a plummeting meteorite can engender as one exploded over central Russia, releasing over 10 times the energy of the Hiroshima bomb in the air and then injuring over 1,200 people. Soon after the event, a priest was quoted claiming that the meteorite was a sign of God's intervention, bearing a warning to humanity about the fragility of life. Surprisingly, the priest didn't seem aware of God's real message, which was to tell the world to tune in to Darkwood Brew tonight for our Evolving Universe, Evolving Faith series. Seriously, though, these days such claims from Christian leaders about the significant astral events are few and far between. You're more likely to hear atheists, agnostics, and believers alike turning to natural law to explain a wide range of phenomena that used to be considered divine intervention. Some people worry that scientific discoveries make God smaller. They wonder how many years we have left before society completely does away with God, replacing divine authority with human ego. The great creation versus evolution controversy of the last century can be seen as a line-in-the-sand moment for some Christians who refuse to budge with Darwin, feeling that if the theory of evolution were allowed to advance, it might just signal the end of faith, or at least Christian faith. On the other hand, some people celebrate when science seems to make God smaller. New atheists like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens look forward to the demise of God with a level of enthusiasm that an oncologist might have for a cure for cancer. They view atheism as liberation from primitive superstition, fear, and prejudice. They dream of a day when a God-free world creates everlasting peace and prosperity as humans turn their attention from the heavens to the earth and quit fighting with each other over who believes in the right God. Well, as science continues to explain more and more of life through natural evolutionary processes, are these really our only choices between atheistic science and fundamentalistic religion? Well, joining us for a discussion about these things, the formation of stars, and also the possibility of life on other planets tonight is an astronomer from the Adler Planetarium in Chicago. You saw her last week. She's rejoining us this week, Dr. Grace Wolfe Chase. But before we go any further with her into the episode, let's take a look at what happened last week.
What is the most astounding fact you can share with us about the universe?
The most astounding fact is the knowledge that the atoms that comprise life on Earth, the atoms that make up the human body, are traceable to the crucibles that cooked light elements into heavy elements in their core.
As we explore more and more and we learn more and more in science, we see that far from taking away the mystery, we deepen the mystery.
With spirituals and with the Beethoven's Fifth, with guitars and marimbas. Praise him with record players and with magnetic tapes. Let everything that breathes praise the Lord. Every living cell, hallelujah.
I love the jazz on your show. I love jazz music, and I love the way that jazz is a collaboration. It is about all the musicians working together, and I think it's a powerful analogy for creation, that God created us, gave each of us gifts and talents and abilities, works with us, teaches us to use them, but then involves us, not just in playing. Yes, we're playing along with God, but God wants us to use our gifts to bring the best that we have and our own melodies in, and God improvises with those and weaves it all together into the most beautiful music. Not just, yes, God could have done it all on God's own, but that's not what God wanted to do.
Yeah.
Nikki. Hi.
I have never, ever been in a ball pit before.
What?
You've never been in the ball pit?
No, never.
You gotta go.
No, I've seen them, but I've never been in one.
You know, I remember these ball pits because my kids threw up in them.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's see.
Okay, this is a good one. Share 3 things on your bucket list.
First one is to go skydiving.
I want to go skydiving.
Have you ever had those dreams where you're just like floating and, you know, you're flying and everything? Scuba diving is just exactly that.
Don't you get afraid of drowning or being underwater, or getting attacked by an octopus, or any of those things?
I want to learn curling.
What is it?
Like that Winter Olympic sport.
Oh, all right, where you slide the
Yeah, and then it's like bowling and sweeping.
Find one thing you have in common. Do you play sports?
Not currently.
I play soccer, so.
Soccer?
Yeah.
All right.
Actually, I play the drums. Do you play any instruments?
I quit everything I ever tried.
All right.
Actually, fun fact, these aren't real teeth. Yeah.
I have a flicker tooth.
Really?
Ah! Oh my God! No! I can't. Wait.
What?
My front tooth.
Oh my gosh.
What? You don't even understand. I swear to God, I feel like someone planted us here for this reason.
Destiny.
Describe the first time you fell in love.
Oh, I think it was kindergarten. I don't remember his name, but he was beautiful.
I was in the Navy.
You were in the Navy?
And my husband was in the Navy. Long story short, before he ever kissed me or we were ever really together, he told me he loved me. 24 years later, we're more in love and we're better friends than even from the very beginning.
That's true love in its finest. Talk about someone who inspires you.
It's all right to talk about somebody that's a religious character.
Yeah, why not? This is our ball pit. We can talk about whoever we want, right?
Jesus.
All right.
Just my peers. They're all creative in their own ways and have their own realities and own lessons. I just grow from everybody else's as well as my own. Martin Luther King, I think, because the fact that we're sitting in this box together is a big deal, you know?
You know who inspires me, believe it or not, is my daughter. She is everything I ever wanted to be.
All right. Talk about the experience that changed your life. Oh, that's a good one. After my wife decided that it was time that we split, I started to have a different perspective on life. I saw women differently. I saw relationships differently. I think I became more appreciative of women.
How old did you say you are? 20?
Yeah.
Okay. At the age of 21, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And it pulled the rug out from all my plans. It really changes the way you look at things.
My grandmother has it.
Who does?
My grandmother.
There's our comment.
We found the comment.
We found the comment.
That's why we're still here. We found the comment. Oh, create a secret handshake. Ooh. Okay.
Okay, but nothing was spit.
Okay, so that.
I need both hands.
Okay.
So this.
And then whoever gets on the top makes a flag.
Oh, now I forgot what it is.
And then like maybe a little twitch in the middle.
1, 2, 1, 2.
High 10. All right, we did it.
That was
awesome. I actually had a lot of fun. I was a little bit nervous because normally you don't hang out with strangers in ball pits. I got to learn some pretty cool things about you.
It was really nice to meet you.
You too.
I hope I see you again. Okay, I love it.
I'm really impressed by you. I was worried that I would start talking to you like a mom. I don't know if I did.
No. Nah, you didn't. Trust me. You did good.
Supercake, subscribe.
1, 2, 3. This is our ball pit. We can say whatever we want.
Hey, let's go for it. Nobody's paying attention. Nobody's hearing it. Just between you and I.
It's just between us, yeah. This is a very fun video. It makes you smile. It makes you think about all these strange people coming together and being able to say what they think is important to them and knowing that it's okay.
Yeah,
There's no judgment on it. There's an effect on another person, but it's not life or death kind of stuff. So
it's just free. It's just nice.
Yeah. Reminds me actually a lot of kind of the dynamic we see happening with this convergence within Christianity right now of different people who used to be on different sides of the theological swimming pool, realizing that both sides, at least portions of both sides, have really moved on and finding new common ground. It's like we're all sitting in this ball pit saying, "Yeah, you're here, huh? Really?
We found the common."
Yeah, that's right. I think there's also a lot of conversation now between literally Christians and scientists in the ball pit, to it, and a lot more dialogue between faith and science these days going on, which I think is also part of that convergence.
Yeah, in that same convergence mode where they can speak boldly from their own perspective and be able to say, how does this enrich the fullness of our whole discussion about life?
Absolutely. So a whole lot of people who are evangelical Christians or who grew up in that camp now who are very much interested in scientific development and evolutionary theory and so forth, and a whole lot of us who were part of the liberal end of that swimming pool who realized that, who embraced science early on, but maybe embraced it so enthusiastically that we thought that science could also explain not simply the hows, but the whys of what's going on, and realizing, oh, there's actually more to it than that, and realizing also that maybe we don't have to understand everything before we fall in love. So there's this interesting convergence going on between people who would kind of emphasize the love without understanding, the people who would emphasize the understanding without necessarily as much of the love.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The poetry and the imagination of language and how it can merge together even within the scientific discussion, I think has been really fruitful.
I love Cynthia Astel's blog, the Darkwood Brew blog, about that this week, about all the people, all the liberals who I part of that grew up in that end. We're all part of that end of the things. How we kind of got into our heads so much and realized, hey, where's the art? Where's the great music and the metaphors and stuff? It's like, oh, maybe you can't just have it all up in your head.
Symbol? What symbol?
Yeah.
It's not EM squared or something.
Yeah, but we thought that was like an anti-intellectual thing to to go for something else. But I think the realization is that you really can't understand anything, most fully unless you are in love with it.
Yeah.
Even a geologist, who knows everything about rocks, likely fell in love with the rocks before she fell in love with her understanding of rocks.
Exactly. And I don't know too many scientists that would do a study of observation of something without also implying what are the implications of what I'm seeing. Mm-hmm. What does this have to do with the greater image of who we are in God's world?
Yeah.
Maybe they don't say it that way, but it's that where does it all fit together and where does it all come together? And that's kind of our question of the week this week. We were talking about how does your faith change, or how does your mindset change when you hear new information, like new scientific information. The question itself was, imagine that intelligent life had been discovered on another planet. What effect would such news have on you? Outside of the conversation of whether you should use affect or effect, which I looked up, by the way, and we did it right. Affect is the verb, so we used it right. There was lots of good conversation about, jokes about whether there's intelligent life on this planet, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right.
But Robert Kipley answered that this was, he thought, a great question. I think it would forever change our perspective as drastically as when humanity first realized that Earth was moving around the sun and not vice versa. It would be a crisis for people who have a literal reading of the Bible, and they would deny the discovery for as long as possible. It would serve to open up a cosmic perspective that would create a deep yearning to merge with another life. Mm. We would see it as part of ourselves, like long-lost relatives.
That's beautiful.
That yearning part I love.
Yeah. Reminded of that the time that he's referring to when Galileo suggested for the first time or actually was really confirming Copernican theory that the suggestion that the sun might be the center and that we revolve around the sun rather than the opposite way, with the planets and sun revolving around us, which is suggested in the Bible, and the amazing controversy that engendered. There's this one guy who was one of the leading theological thinkers of the day, this Cardinal, you see him on the screen there, Cardinal Roberto Bellarmine. He wrote this scathing letter in 1615, talking about Galileo, and says this: to affirm that the sun is really fixed at the center of the heavens and that the earth revolves very swiftly around the sun is a dangerous thing, not only irritating the theologians and philosophers, but injuring our holy faith and making the sacred scripture false. I don't know about you, but is your faith undermined by the notion that we revolve around the sun?
No, not at all. I guess because I grew up with that, but I was just thinking about the whole evolutionary debate. I don't think that irritates me as a theologian either. So.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it seems like it really reflects the danger we get into when we believe more in a God of the gaps than the God of the fullness, meaning like whenever we try to explain anything that we don't understand by simply inserting God there, and that becomes the basis of our belief in God. God is that which we don't understand. Then the more science moves along, the smaller God becomes. Yeah, and so that's why a lot of people get worried, like, oh my gosh, science might advance so much that God might go away, or at least any hope of belief in God. And yet the only God that's dying with that was a God that never lived to begin with.
Exactly.
God does not live in the gaps.
As if God exists because of our need for understanding.
Yeah.
Rather
Think about,
than opening our understanding.
Yeah, and how much stress, like the cardinal was feeling like, oh my gosh, it's all over if we take this in. The God of the gaps theology, you always look back and say, you know what, that was really silly. This was not nearly as threatening to the faith as I ever thought it was. In fact, I was more threatening to the faith defending the God of the gaps than any other part of that whole debate.
And expanding that whole notion about how science opens things up, the more things that we discover, like intelligent life on other planets, the greater God becomes, because the awesomeness of the whole just expands and continues to expand, I think. So those were some of the answers we got. The possibility of new friends, says Don Glennie Adams. New places to travel, more knowledge to gain, and stories to be read. As for my religious beliefs, it would only strengthen my awe and wonder at creation, our Creator. It would not surprise me a bit. I would be thankful to be able to be around to see such a discovery made. So that was a good one. Zach Bressler also said, maybe it would introduce some real humility into the human race. I think that we have, as a species, a human centrism problem. That's a good way of saying selfish. And maybe knowing that there are other places with intelligent life would make humanity reflect on the way that we treat the plurality of life on our own planet. So that's that same kind of stuff, that God does not close down with more and more scientific revelation, but rather opens up and expands. Yeah. And so that just expands our wonder and awe that much further rather than shutting it down. And Lynn Gullickson Willis, finally, there would be the opportunity to embrace a God who is as big as our cosmos and beyond, a God of infinite possibilities. Same kind of enthusiasm there. And Robert Hurst, finally, it might change what it means to be in God's image. If creation itself changes to be expanded ever more, then the image of God has to change to go along with that. So
Good
that
point, Robert.
Personal evolution in that sense is really, really strong.
That's right. What does it mean to be in God's image?
Right.
What would unite us all together? Yeah.
Yeah, finding our common in our little handshake thing would be easy.
That's right. That's right.
So it's a good response.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we move on, we want to note that we've got some amazing guests coming up in this coming weeks too. Some top evolutionary theologians and scientists from around the world. Next week we'll be joined by Michael Dowd, who's got a fantastic book, Thank God for Evolution, and we'll be talking about a new theism that embraces science and what the implications might be. Owen Gingrich is was an astronomer at Harvard University and also with the Smithsonian Institution. Fantastic guy. He's got a really wonderful book about God called God's Universe that we'll really be talking about. How can a person of faith embrace all this and understand God as behind all of this without becoming a God of the gaps kind of a believer? He'll also be discussing intelligent design. Is that new movement towards embracing intelligent design? Is that really science, or is it some weird other thing? So it'd be a very interesting conversation.
Weird science.
Weird science. Yeah, exactly. Actually, a lot of that the intelligent design ends up being a God of the gaps kind of theology. But anyway, we've got some great guests coming up. Also, check out our blogs during the week. We've got some people you're used to seeing, such as Ian Lynch and down on the bottom left, and Cynthia Astle, who was blogging for us in the last series, and we were just referring to down on the bottom right, and Leslie Muro on the upper left, and then Marianne Folkert has been a blogger in the distant past and has come back for this series.
And we still have the guy upside down on his head there.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'll have a post up tomorrow if you care to read that too. So.
Turns the world upside down.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're going to transition into our Numa Divina reading. If you're joining us for the first time tonight, we center our episode on usually a reading from Scripture, actually. This time, a little different. We're going to be taking a poem by Ernesto Cardenal, the poem you actually heard him read up front of the episode. We ask you simply to hear it read once, and then you'll see it on the screen, and just simply find that verse or that line that resonates most to you. We're going to be asking you, if you're on the live chat tonight, to signal that on the Numa button, and if you're in the coffee house, to be signaling that on your Numa sheets. Later in our episode, we'll offer Grace Wolf Chase a chance to comment on that line chosen by the world community, or at least I will, at whichever line is chosen. So, also, finally, I forgot, we want to apologize to you if this is the second time you're joining Darkwood Brew. Last week we had so many viewers trying to get on that our whole system crashed, and so we've been experiencing some growing pains. Good problem to have, I know, but kind of a pain if you're getting online if you tried to get on last week to watch. So, anyway, we are expanding our bandwidth, and the world's our oyster now. So
yeah.
Let's
Infinite
hear.
possibilities.
That's right. Let's hear now Stardust by Ernesto Cardenal.
What's in a star? We are. All the elements of our body and of the planet were once in the belly of a star. We are stardust. 15 billion years ago, we were a mass of hydrogen floating in space, turning, slowly, dancing. And the gas condensed more and more, gaining increasingly more mass. And mass became star and began to shine. As they condensed, they grew hot and bright. Gravitation produced thermal energy, light, and heat. That is to say, love. Stars were born, grew, and died. And the galaxy was taking the shape of a flower, the way it looks now on a starry night. Our flesh and our bones come from other stars, and perhaps even from other galaxies. We are universal, and after death, we will help form other stars and other galaxies. We come from the stars, and to them we shall return.
What was that line that seemed to jump off the screen for you? We encourage you to, if you're on chat, to hit that Numa button. I was just informed during that reading that we are actually experiencing overload tonight, too, even though we were bumping up bandwidth. So if you are having problems with chat, we invite you to go to the Darkwood Brew Facebook page. Just go to Facebook and type in Darkwood Brew, and there is chat going on at the Facebook page, and that's where you'll have a chance to offer questions or put up that verse if you're not able to do it online at the Darkwood Brew site. But let's simply take that line that arose in your mind, and we want to simply let that rest within us, and recognizing this is not simply a broadcast, but also a spiritual gathering where we're listening for the presence of the Spirit. Let's simply take this next minute as music plays to take a couple deep breaths, let them out slowly, and in so doing, clear away whatever obstacles you may have brought with you to experiencing the presence of God in our gathering tonight. Well, this time we're very pleased to be joined by Dr. Grace Wolfe Chase, an astronomer with the Adler Planetarium in Chicago. It's great to have you back again, Grace.
Hi, Eric. It's great to be back. And I hope you can hear me better than I can hear you, because I'm having a few problems.
Oh, okay. Well, I can hear you just fine. So
good.
But thanks for coming back. You really created a lot. Well, both of you and Bruce, but you really created a lot of buzz last week in response to the episode, and we knew people would love to have you on and hear more wisdom from your research this week.
Well, I'm really pleased to be here, and I'd like to kind of start with line 8 of the poem here, because I think it's a beautiful segue into some of the things that I wanted to bring to you tonight. And that's: stars were born, grew, and died, and the galaxy was taking the shape of a flower, the way it looks now on a starry night. And I believe that we have a visual of looking out at the Milky Way on a starry night.
We do, right here. Let's see. Did that go up? Get that visual up?
So, so what you're looking at here, folks, first of all, I'd like you to take a mental trip back in your minds and imagine that you lived in the days that the Psalms were being written. Thousands of years ago, when you could see the Milky Way sort of like this in the night sky. This, of course, is a deep photograph taken by one of our astronomers, actually, at the Adler Planetarium, Dr. Jose Francisco Salgado. And what you see in the foreground here are an array of radio telescopes in California. But just appreciate, look at the beauty of the night sky and of the Milky Way, and imagine that you could go out of your house right now and catch such an incredible view of the Milky Way. On a very good night, in very good conditions, we can see maybe a few thousand stars. Maybe we could count a few thousand stars. In recent years, we may not see the Milky Way like this in the night sky, but we've been able to develop instruments that have unlocked things that were beforehand invisible to our eyes, because our eyes are actually only sensitive to a small part of the entire spectrum of light that's available. So I'd like to ask Eric to put up my second image, actually, and show you sort of a different view towards the center of the Milky Way, the center of our galaxy. An infrared view of our galaxy taken by the Spitzer Space Telescope. What you're going to be seeing showing here is a view that your human eyes would not perceive, but it's an image that's colorized in different colors, if you will, of infrared light. And the neat thing about infrared light is it penetrates into our galaxy a lot further than visible light does. Because in addition to all the stars in our galaxies, there are cold clouds of gas and dust that block our views of stars behind. So if you can see this incredibly beautiful, a little bit funky blue, pink, green image that Eric has up on the screen right now, what you're seeing, the blue background there, that's not like a totally blue sky. If you could zoom up on that image, you would see that it breaks up into little pinpricks of light. And basically everything you see in blue there is a star on our line of sight through the galaxy.
Wow.
And it looks in the image like the stars are just packed in there, really dense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
One thing to remember is that we're looking out through the galaxy. And even though this is a two-dimensional picture, it's covering incomprehensible miles of space. So to the other end of our galaxy is this great group of stars that's about 100,000 light years across. Now you have to multiply that number by 6 trillion to get the distance in miles. So you're literally looking out through our galaxy in that image, seeing some stars that are nearly something like 500 quadrillion miles away. And all those beautiful features, the pink and the green, are gas clouds that are sculpted by hot, luminous young stars that affect their environments. And most of these things are things that are invisible to our eyes. But these same stars that sculpt these beautiful features are often these very bright, luminous stars that, as the poem says, eventually explode and seed what we call the interstellar medium, the vast spaces between the stars, with all of these heavy elements that were built up through nuclear fusion in the interiors of these stars throughout their lifetimes. So we have, while we've lost something over the ages, we've also gained something in that in being able to create technology that extend the human senses, we've been able to peer into parts of our universe that were hidden from us in the past. Another nice example of this, I believe, is the next slide we have, Eric, which is a slide of an embryonic star.
An embryonic star.
An embryonic star, that's right. So extending the metaphor here of stellar life, we can talk about embryonic stars and infant stars in the sense that an embryonic star is a star that's not born yet. And by born, I mean it hasn't accumulated all of the material that it's going to be when it's a star, say, like our sun, and when it can shine brightly for millions or billions of years, when it starts to undergo this process of fusion. Before then, a star starts out as a huge collapsing cloud of gas and dust that in regions that are very dark to visible light telescopes. In fact, even to some infrared telescopes, they're dark. And some of these regions are so dense that gravity can pull these together and form new stars. So do we have that next slide of the infant star, Eric? Am I seeing it?
Yeah, I just put it up.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Okay, we're panning over to it now. Before that one, actually.
Oh. Uh-oh.
The star with the jet, the 3-panel slide. Do we have that one? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's look at this one first, and then talk about the next one. So here you're seeing 3 views of an embryonic star. Over at the left, you're seeing what visible light telescopes reveal. Dark patches of sky that are so dusty that we can't peer into them, you know, similar to the fact that, you know, if you've got a lot of dust and stuff on the window of the windshield of your car, or the window of your house, you can't peer out. Well, these dusty areas are so thick, we can't peer into them with telescopes that collect visible light. So in the second and third panels, in the second panel, you're seeing basically the infrared view. If you had infrared eyes, what you could see. And then in the third panel, a combination of the two, what we get when we put together both the visible light image and the infrared image. And so you can see that at the center of this cloud, there is an object that we call a protostar. A little bit more about that in a minute. And one of the things that all of these very young stars do is they power these immense, we call them jets, because they're streams of material that come out from the center of the star and span light years of space. So as in the artist's rendition here, you see basically what the view would look like if we put all the different observations that we have together, all sorts of different telescopes, all sorts of different scales. So this baby star is surrounded by this vast disk, first of all, of gas and dust. And this is a really neat story that I would love to share with your listeners because it's a beautiful example, I think, of how science progresses over time, over sometimes vast periods of time. I'd like to take you back in time a couple of hundred years to the 18th century when the philosopher Immanuel Kant and the physicist Pierre Laplace independently came up with an idea and hypothesis about how our solar system might have formed. And it went like this, and they were working from very little data at this point in time. They essentially understood that our solar system is pretty flat. The orbits of the planets around the sun are pretty much all on a plane. They all orbit the sun in the same direction. And they also had a pretty good understanding of how gravity works, thanks to, among other people, but primarily Sir Isaac Newton. And they hypothesized that our solar system might have started with this immense cloud of spinning gas and dust in space, and that gravity pulled this cloud together. And as gravity pulled the cloud together, since it was spinning a little bit, it would have flattened out, you know, kind of like a ball of pizza dough, so to speak. And in this would form this tremendous disk of material around the infant sun. And so the sun would be at the center, accumulating material, and the planets would eventually form in this vast disk of material around it. So this was known as the nebular hypothesis, because at that point in time, there was absolutely no way to test this theory. And today, even though we can't run the clock of time backwards in our own solar system, we can look with these incredible technologies out into our galaxy to look for places where the star birth is actually occurring today and study the different stages that are important. And right back at around the mid-1990s, the Hubble Space Telescope, first in a place that's actually a very, very familiar gas cloud to some people, the Orion Nebula. Orion is a beautiful wintertime constellation, and you can see it if you go out early evening night in February. You can see Orion, and if you can find Orion's sword, you can find a little nebulous patch that in binoculars or in a telescope will look, well, like a nebula, like a cloud. And that's, in fact, what the word nebula means. But if you've got the eyes of the Hubble Space Telescope, you would also see that in the foreground of this bright, shining hot gas that surrounds very, very luminous, massive young stars, there are these little dark disk-like objects that after 200 years or so of thinking about that this might have been the way our solar system and maybe other planetary systems form, we actually started to find evidence in the last few decades that, in fact, this is how new planetary systems are born. And so this is a beautiful example of how today we now speak of protostellar and protoplanetary theory, because not only do we have observational evidence that supports some of these models, but they can also make predictions as to how these systems should evolve, and we can go gather observations and see how well we're doing with our models, how well our models actually fit the picture.
Wow. So it sounds like, from what you're saying, this whole our solar system may not be at all unique. That there's a lot going on, a lot of planet formation out there. If this is the way stars are born, well,
exactly, Eric. So today we think that most stars, in fact, are born with planets, and there's a mission that's bearing some of that for us.
Okay, now wait a minute. Let me just let that sink in for a moment. You're saying most stars that we see, and you just indicated like billions of stars in our own galaxy.
In our own galaxy, there are approximately 400 billion stars, approximately, give or take 100 billion or so.
You know that number keeps changing. Let me give you an idea of how much that is. Because I used to go on the number of 100 billion, then I had to change it to 200 billion, and I used to illustrate that with cans of Morton salt, imagining that just one grain of salt in that 1 pound can of Morton salt was a star. You'd have to have 76,000 cans of Morton salt just to equal 200 billion stars in the universe. So now you're telling me I've got to up that number to 152 cans, and every star may have planets associated with it.
In fact, you know, what you just now said, we do uncover more and more stars each day, each day, so to speak, in that when you look out at the stars in our galaxy, most of the stars we actually see aren't the nearest stars, but they're the brightest stars.
And we're gonna have to actually get to those near bright stars and so forth at our next conversation. We need to move on to and get also our Numaverse. If you, Morris, did you get the Numaverse from our online?
For those that were able to vote, it was verse 11 online, but I suggest that we take a query in-house.
Yeah,
also.
We come from the stars, and to them we shall return. How about in the house here? We have a lot of, I see 3s, 11s, 7s, 10, a lot of diversity here.
7, 10s, 11s.
Boy, I don't see a clear, I see about every verse pretty evenly represented. I would say if there's anything, I think that
pretty wide distribution
the copy house
in here.
Affirmed the entire poem.
Pretty wide distribution.
Great. Well, we will when we'll come back, we'll take a look particularly at that 11th verse and continue our conversation with Grace Wolf Chase. But before we do that, we want to hear a little from the band.
Great, thank you, Eric. I'd like to introduce the band quickly. On the keyboards, Matt Amandus. On the drums, Carlos Figueroa and Steve Gomez on the bass. We're about to do a new Chuck Moronic composition. This is called Give Thanks to the Lord. Here comes Carol Rogers.
And I have a friend with me today. Oh, yeah, we're green light. I have a friend with me today, Tammy Tyree. And, And our wonderful robes are furnished by Countryside Community Church. Thank you.
To give praise to the Lord Most High, to proclaim
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks, Carol, I guess, and wonderful. And thanks, Chuck Moronic, for supplying that another piece from the Psalms project. Yeah, all right. Well, we have Grace Wolf Chase back once again, and just kind of as a lead-in here, I want to note this this line from Ernesto Cardenal's poem that rose in the internet and amongst certain folks in the coffee house. We come from the stars, and to them we shall return. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Grace, these stars, in order to actually get all of the elements for life, like carbon, oxygen, these things weren't created in the Big Bang, that these are actually cooked in stars and then weren't dispersed until stars basically died, right? And then exploded in a supernova?
Yes, and the very massive luminous stars not like our sun, but stars that are 10,000 times brighter than our sun and a lot more massive, are the types of stars that eventually build up the very heaviest elements, and at the end of their lifetimes, they explode and seed the space around them with the products of millions of years of nuclear fusion, yes.
Wow, so that would... If every star basically likely has a planet or many planets associated with it, the suggestion then would be that pretty much all these planets have what we know of as the basic building blocks of life on them as well?
That's right. The elements that we know of here on Earth are ubiquitous. The universe is mostly hydrogen and helium, but in planets that are expected to be built up in these disks, and that we're starting to observe, to find, we would expect there to be habitats in the universe that are conducive to life, yes.
Wow. Now, before we go any further on that line of thought, I just wanted to ask a question that's probably in the mind of many who aren't familiar with the research from the Kepler research especially. How did you know that there are so many planets out there anyway?
So there are several techniques that we use to find the planets orbiting other stars. And the Kepler Observatory, it's a space telescope that uses a technique that's easiest to explain. So that's the one we'd like to focus on. So Kepler is actually staring at a patch of sky equivalent to the size of your hand held at arm's length. So picture holding up your hand against the backdrop of the Milky Way. It's staring at a patch of sky that large in the constellation of Cygnus, a very rich area of the Milky Way, over a period of years. And what it's looking for is it's looking for very small dips in the light output of hundreds of thousands of stars that looking through in this region, small dips that occur when a planet is orbiting the star along our line of sight, because you could imagine sorts of different orbits. Right. The planet actually crosses the face of its star along our line of sight. You could measure a small dip in the light output, and Kepler uniquely positioned outside of our atmosphere to cut down on twinkling and all the effects of our atmosphere and take very accurate records of the light output of stars, so we can identify planets in the spectra of stars. And I believe what Eric has posted up here for you to view may look kind of like a graph, but it's taken from a science project that you can actually become involved in. One of the Apple Planetarium is one of a number of institutions in what's called the Citizen Science Alliance. And what we do is we develop a suite of online science projects. They're not all astronomy by any means. In fact, they're not even all, physical sciences. They're biological sciences, humanities even as well. And there's a project called Planet Hunters that's using these data from Kepler and having citizen scientists, that means volunteers from around the world. And we have more than 750,000 people now around the world that participate in one or more of these projects. So Eric is showing you pictures from what's called Planet Hunters. And the Planet Hunters project is a way anybody, regardless of their background, can contribute to the effort of identifying planets that orbit other stars. You know, our
actually just did that last week. So yeah, this is one of those graphs, and so the idea is you pull off those dips that are in red. You actually are looking at multiple images that were taken, that there's not enough people to process that data. Just if you're going to rely on scientists, so they have all kinds of people out there looking at these images and multiple people looking at any single image, so that you don't have to worry about like blowing it too badly for the scientists. You identify these dips and they go back and look at them. I have to admit I didn't find any planets, but I did find a giant giraffe orbiting one of the stars.
Well, that should make it into a new paper, Eric.
So we have so the data is pretty good then. That you take the Kepler data and other data and you extrapolate and you realize, oh my gosh, this is a very common thing. Lots, pretty much any star has at least one planet, if not like ours. We have 8.5 planets or whatever, and maybe even more. Huh?
So we're entering sort of the era of comparative planetology, or planetary systemology, if you will, where we can start to compare how our solar system looks similar and different. That's where we always start in science, by comparing, what's similar, what's different, so we can start to form categories of things and increase our understanding of how different types of planet form in different types of environments.
Yeah. So what do you think the probability is that there could be life out there besides our own?
I personally think it looks more and more likely every day. I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Oh, okay, well, I'll just, and I know that probably as a scientist with you have to be a little bit more restrained too. But I would say, at least looking at that, if I were to think that every star out there, and again, 400 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy alone, and we are one of billions of galaxies, if every star has a planet and it has the basic building blocks of life, I would think the question is not, could there be life out there, but like, what happens when we discover it? I mean, they're like, how could there not be other life out there?
Of course, that's a great question, Eric, and that's the way I think most of us astronomers these days feel. We still have one example where we know for a fact that life developed. So what we're doing at this point in time is looking for planets that look like Earth, so to speak. Our biggest interest is in finding planets that have similar environments to Earth, similar temperatures, the presence of water. I'm sorry, I'm hearing my voice about 10 seconds after I speak.
Oh, so my. You can just take those off if they're bothering you.
Okay. Is that better?
Oh, you know what? They're telling me you have your browser, you have the Darkwood Brew browser open. Just close that. You won't get the echo, or you won't get the delay. Close the Darkwood Brew down. It's like when you listen to a radio and you ask a question over the radio. Yeah. Is that better now?
Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
It's like when you listen to a...
But you need to down Darkwood Brew. Like shut off Darkwood Brew, because now I'm hearing you. I tell you what, while you're figuring that out, Morris has a question from the internet, and we're going to need to end with that, I think. Morris?
We do have a number of questions from the internet. This from Dove, Culture Dove, who is referencing Carl Sagan, a Carl Sagan quote. And he says, understanding is a form of ecstasy. And the question, is this the point of connection between science and spirituality? Again, referencing a Carl Sagan quote, understanding is a form of ecstasy. And the question, is this the point of connection between science and spirituality?
Would you say that one more time, Morris?
Certainly. This question references a quote by Carl Sagan, who says, understanding is a form of ecstasy. And the question is this the point of connection between science and spirituality?
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. That's a beautiful way of expressing it, Morris. And I also appreciated what Eric and Chris were talking about before, about a geologist studies rocks because they love rocks. I mean, what I do because I'm drawn in by the incredible beauty of the night sky and by the incredible both complexity, simplicity of the universe, if you will. The fact that there is so much we can explore and we can learn and we can come to a deeper understanding. And that is an ecstatic experience. I get very excited. I feel very blessed because I really love what I do. And, you know, I would wish that for everybody on this planet, that they find themselves in a career where they can say they're really excited by what they do.
Yeah. So on that level, I want to ask just one other question, then we need to move on. But you are a scientist and a Christian. Has your the expansion of scientific knowledge for you made God smaller or larger, or what's been the effect?
Absolutely not. It makes the whole thing more awesome. And I would personally welcome the discovery of, you know, cosmic brothers and sisters out there, so to speak. And I wouldn't want to place any assumptions on how God may relate to them, because I think it is very important, you know, to realize how we experience may not be the same as how others might experience God. So I think these conversations are extremely important to have, but none of this in any way threatens. It just increases my appreciation for the wonder of it all.
Yeah, amen. Well, Grace, thank you so much for opening a window into some more of that wonder for us this evening. And we thank the Adler Planetarium also for being so helpful in partnering with us on this series and finding amazing guests that are coming up.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Every week at Darkwood Brew, we invite our online community as well as the coffee house to participate in the ritual of communion. So if you have juice and crackers or bread and wine at home, we invite you to share that with us. I want to just take a moment to kind of look at communion a bit differently than you may be used to looking at it, and actually bring it together with this whole debate over evolution versus creation and so forth, and offer another angle on this very ritual. A lot of the angst that more conservative Christians have had about science and especially embracing evolutionary science is that if you understand that evolution is a good and natural thing, that God is behind the process of evolution, you must also assume then that death is a natural part of things, because you don't evolve without this survival mechanism. And in fact, the whole universal story from the Big Bang up until today is also about the deaths of stars and so forth, but also the deaths of species once we get to planet Earth and the deaths of human beings. And the evolution does not take place apart from that cycle. And yet, in a more conservative understanding of religion, death came only as a result of sin, which then Jesus overcomes. And so that if you embrace a notion of the cosmos or our life on earth that says death is actually part of God's plan, in their view, it completely erases the need for Jesus. And that's the heart of the threat that people who embrace that form of theology feel when it comes to evolution versus creation. But I want to suggest another way of looking at this without denying at all our knowledge of forgiveness and grace in this meal that's represented here. Let's also look at what this meal is about. If we look at as Grace said, even the elements in our universe that bear life actually come from the deaths of stars. They had actually you couldn't even have carbon or oxygen or even gold or some of the heavier elements or iron without stars dying and exploding, and then our Earth itself likely wouldn't even be here without planets crashing into each other and breaking up into larger and larger configurations. The whole universal story for 13.7 billion years is about death of one form transforming into a higher form of life, or at least of possibility. As we look at life on Earth and evolution, we see the same thing. that as things die, death is one thing if looked under a microscope, but it's actually if you pull back a little bit, it's part of a larger process, a transformative process that leads to greater and greater life. Does that process of death leading transformatively to greater and greater life remind you of anything? Could it be that in the cross we find the universe imprinted upon it, the very DNA of the universe reflected in the cross of Christ? That the cross of Christ really brings together the whole story of our universe, the whole story of life itself on earth. That in order to be transformed, we first must be broken apart. And that while we are broken, this is not the end of the story, but only a new beginning. We are called as Christians, we are called as humans to surrender our lives, to let go of life as we know it, of our precious understandings as we so carefully hold them. Let go and let God transform them into something new. These are the gifts of God. We share them for the people of God. We invite you to participate in the feast. Carol and the Brews brothers. Well, we really appreciate your joining us this evening from around the world. And once again, we apologize for the difficulties we've been having adjusting to an even greater number of people coming in from the world. I promise you, we will be doing our very best this coming week to up our bandwidth even more and make sure that Darkwood Brew is streaming smoothly for you as soon as possible. So just by way of reference, that Citizens website for if you want to become a citizen scientist yourself, and it's quite easy. I even did it. Of course, I did find that giraffe, but it's at, let me put that up on the screen there, that it's at zooniverse.org, Zooniverse. And then next week, we will be joined by our Skype guest, Michael Dowd, author of Thank God for Evolution, and talking about the new theism, that it can embrace science and faith seamlessly. So until then, my friends, may the Spirit of the living God, made known to us most fully in Jesus Christ our Lord, go before you to show you the way, go above you to watch over you, go behind you to, well, push you into places you may not necessarily go yourself, go beneath you to uphold you and uplift you, go beside you to be your strong companion, and dwell within you to remind you that you are surely not alone. You are loved beyond your wildest imagination. And may the fire of God's blessing burn brightly upon you and within you, now and always. Amen.